Morning, everyone. Okay, so it's already 8 o'clock. Let me just share my screen. Okay, for a while. Okay, I'm now sharing my screen. One more time. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. So good morning, everyone, and good day to all. Welcome again for another series of the LaSalle Sustainability Lecture. And today we have an exciting topic, topic entitled Sustainable Healthcare, the Role of HTA in Philippine Resource Allocation. But before we officially start our lecture for this morning, we'll have a short prayer.
Let me be the change I want to see, to do with strength and wisdom all that needs to be done, and become the hope that I can be. Set me free from my fears and hesitation. Granting courage and humility. Fill me with spirit to face the challenge and start the change I long to see. Today I start the change I want to see. Even if I'm not the light, I can be the spark in faith, service, and communion. Let us start the change we want to see, the change that begins in me. Today I start the change I want to see.
Even if I'm not the light,
Not the light, I can be the spark. Faith, service, and communion. Let us start the change we want to see, the change that begins in
Jesus in us.
Jesus in us.
Okay. To provide an overview of the Sustainability Lecture Series, let us all welcome the Vice President for Research and Innovation of De La Salle University, Manila, Philippines, Dr. Raymond R. Tan.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this month's edition of the 2026 DLSU IALU Sustainability Lecture Series. This lecture series is jointly organized by De La Salle University's Center for Engineering and Sustainable Development Research, the Gokongwei College of Engineering, and the University Sustainability Office. In cooperation with the International Association of LaSalle Universities, which is the global network of the LSU's sister institutions. This lecture series was initially launched in January of 2021 to provide a platform for the exchange of ideas across the IALU network and our partners on various initiatives that are being undertaken by resource persons that are aligned with number one, Pope Francis's 2015 encyclical, Laudato Si, and number two, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. More than 5 years later, this lecture series is still going strong because the world realizes that there's a strong need for us to continue our work in education, in research, in social engagement, in pursuit of a greener planet. This lecture series was originally the product of 2020 discussions by 4 people comprised of Professor Kathleen Aviso, Professor Alvin Colaba, DLSU's Chancellor Emeritus, Dr. Carmelita Quebenco, and myself. The team has since expanded, and of course, Professor Aris Ubando has taken a strong role in the monthly execution of this event, and of course, the entire team of the University Sustainability Office, headed by Executive Director Antonio Carlos Maralit. Every month, we draw on resource persons from the IALU network, and this is an opportunity for all of them to be able to share their interests and activities with a broader audience. The lecture series, of course, are not only streamed via Zoom, but there's a dedicated YouTube channel where most of them are uploaded for delayed asynchronous viewing. Finally, I just want to say that I hope you find today's lecture thought-provoking and interesting. I hope you engage our speaker in a two-way discussion, and I hope you do join us for future iterations of this lecture series. Thank you and good day to all of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tan, for that introduction of the IALU Sustainability Lecture Series. Okay, let me just share again my screen. Okay, now to the meat of our lecture for today. This is entitled Sustainable Healthcare, the Role of HTA in Philippine Resource Allocation. And it's my honor to introduce our speaker for today. Our speaker, Ms. Catherine Lee Ramos. Ms. Catherine Lee Ramos is an assistant professor at De La Salle University's Department of Biomedical Manufacturing and Robotics Engineering. She is a member of the roster of consultants for medical devices for the World Health Organization, or WHO. She has been a member of the Philippine Health Technology Assessment Council, Subcommittee on Clinical Equipment and Devices since 2019. A Purdue University MS-EE graduate and UP Diliman alumna, her expertise spans cardiac electrophysiology and medical device policy. She has served as a biomedical consultant for the HELE, or Hearing for Life, newborn screening initiative, and currently contributes to the HTA International Training Needs Project as a core team member. Let us all welcome our speaker, Ms. Catherine Lee Ramos.
Thank you very much, Doc Aris, and I would like to thank everyone on the team for this opportunity to talk about health technology assessment, particularly in the Philippines. So if I could, is it okay if I share my slides, Doc Aris?
Yes, please.
Okay. So hopefully you can see my slides. Kita po ba?
So, Ms. Catherine is currently loading.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we can see it.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So I will be discussing the HTA, in particular the process flow for clinical equipment and devices. So our chair for the Health Technology Assessment Council is Dr. Jacinto Blas Mantaring III. Okay, so what is health technology assessment? It's actually embodied in the Universal Healthcare Law. So to have a progressive realization of universal healthcare, in particular population coverage, service coverage, and financial coverage, we need to have the resource allocated efficiently and equitably. So HTA was set as a priority setting mechanism. Basically, uh, the objective is who should be getting which intervention at what cost. So what population should be getting which health technology and at what cost should government be paying. So we are looking at the cost to the government. So the Universal Healthcare Act of 2019, Republic Act 1122-3 on Section 34 discusses health technology assessment. So this chapter is on governance and accountability. So it describes a systemic approach to health technology assessment and also a clear role or delineation of the stakeholders. Um, we would like to ensure, as mentioned, an equitable access to quality and affordable, but more technically correct, cost-effective healthcare and protection against financial risk. Because if you would look back at COVID, if we just um, use money reactively, if the government uh, sets money reactively just to a certain incident, that would not be sustainable. So, health technology assessment, as defined in the Universal Healthcare Act, is the systematic evaluation of the properties, effects, or impact of health related technologies, devices, medicines, vaccines, and other health related interventions, including traditional and Chinese medicine, was developed to solve a health problem and improve the quality of lives and health outcomes. So please note that what we are trying to do is we are trying to look at if the health technology would improve quality of life and other health outcomes. So we utilize a multidisciplinary process. We evaluate the clinical, economic, social, organizational, and ethical impact of a particular health technology. So it's already indicated here the different subcommittees. So we have a subcommittee on drugs, subcommittee on vaccines, subcommittee on, as mentioned, TradMed, subcommittee on methods and surgical procedures, and in my case, subcommittee on clinical equipment and devices. The three components of the assessment would include the clinical assessment, economic assessment, and what we call the LSHI assessment, or ethical, legal, social, health impact assessment. So under the Philippine Universal Healthcare Act, it institutionalized HTA as a priority setting mechanism. So what will be, or who and what, which drugs or health technology will be prioritized. So it is recommendatory to DOH and PhilHealth to guide coverage decisions. They created the HTA Council as well as a secretariat and the unit with evidence generation and policy capacity to HTA. So it should adhere to the HTA process principles, and it transitioned to the Department of Science and Technology. So before, in 2019, we were under the DOH, and last 2 years ago, we transitioned to the DOST. So as mentioned, it guides DOH and PhilHealth. So it is recommendatory. So whenever DOH or PhilHealth will uh, purchase or procure health technology or will include it in a coverage decision, it needs to have a positive recommendation from the Health Technology Assessment Council. However, it is not mandated for private sector donations or research projects that will pilot the use of a technology. So for the governance, this is the HTA Council. So it has a core committee, and then indicated would be the different subcommittees. So we facilitate coverage recommendations, which will be financed. So it was created in October 2019. This is our subcommittee headed by Ms. Agnet Peralta, the former chair of CDRRHR under the Philippine FDA, Dr. Mark James de los Santos, and myself. What is our criteria for our HTA recommendations? As indicated in the Universal Healthcare Act, responsiveness to magnitude and severity. So how responsive would the health technology be to the magnitude and severity? We also look at what is the severity of the particular disease that will be used, or rather, the health technology would be used for. The safety and effectiveness of the health technology. This is actually also being done by the Philippine FDA. However, we are also looking at other evidence like real world evidence. The Philippine FDA, on the other hand, looks at, for example, the quality management system of the manufacturer. So we do not do that. We just focus on the health technology itself. The affordability and viability of the health technology. So this is from the perspective of the government, the cost effectiveness, the household financial impact, and the ethical, legal, ethical, social, legal, and health system impact. So please note for the cost effectiveness, we use what we call the ICER, or the incremental cost over the effectiveness ratio. So we look at the incremental cost divided by what the effectiveness, we depending on the health outcomes. So we might look at quality of life or how effective it is in reducing mortality, so on. So we have the HTA Council, which recommends, and then we also do the assessments involving the HTA division. So the HTA division would also have an evidence generation, policy and planning unit, as well as technical secretarial support. In this diagram, you can see that we have an HTA research network. What does this mean? So internally, we have our evidence generation unit, but we are actually looking for external assessment group. So I'm very happy to be given this opportunity to ask everyone here in this room to help us in the health technology assessment in the Philippines, since there are so many health technologies. For the clinical equipment and devices alone, even scissors have to be assessed, okay, using the clinical assessment, economic assessment, and the LSHI assessment. So we really need the help of everyone, of the whole society, so that we can do the assessment faster. So if you would like to be involved in our HTA research network, please do not hesitate to approach us or email us. Our website is hta.dost.gov.ph. I will actually reiterate that later. So in 2020, we first developed the guidance, normative guidance on HTA in the Philippines. So we have a process guide and the methods guide. So there is an ongoing alignment currently for the process guide and the methods guide, a second edition, to be aligned with the DOH and PhilHealth policies. So what are the current tracks or the uh, division of the HTA assessment in terms of the health technology, how we assess them? So we have the general HTA process. Most of the health technology would fall under this particular process. The expedited HTA process, which would cover all emergencies, particularly during COVID. Minor drug inclusion. So if your health technology is already approved, has had an assessment, but you have minor changes that will fall under minor drug inclusion. And then recently we have the accelerated track. Before, it was only used for clinical equipment and devices, and now this particular track is being used for all health technology. So the health technology accelerated track would uh, that would cover health technologies that are already mature, that has undergone so many assessments in other countries, and if proof and evidence can be submitted, then that can fall under accelerated track. So for the HTA, as I mentioned, the general track, this actually takes a bit longer. So we did benchmarking uh, in several countries, and the general HTA process would actually take 1 year to 2 years. Okay, so it's really time consuming. Now, uh, in the HTA process, in the HTA Philippines process track, we estimate it to be 13 to 29 months. So it's depends on the complexity, the types of assessment, and also the possibility of appeals for reassessment. So this would cover new health technologies as well as existing health technologies that are currently uh, under the PhilHealth benefit packages. So we also have the HTA process track for uh, clinical equipment and devices. So this is for the um, general track. However, when we look at the Philippine Essential Medical Device List, which is actually a recommendation of the World Health Organization that all countries should have an essential medical device list, we decided to have a separate track for this, or what we call the accelerated track. Okay. So initially, the PMDL already includes 375 medical devices distributed across 16 functional categories. These categories are anesthesiology devices, cardiovascular devices, dental devices, and so on. Okay. So the accelerated track is will be followed if the devices are included in the World Health Organization Essential Medical Devices list. So this is called the WHO MEDEVIS, or if it's included in a clinical practice guidelines adopted by the DOH National Practice Guidelines Program. The DOH is actively pursuing uh, standardizing all the clinical practice guidelines. So they are assisted by the different medical societies on this. The list of if it's a clinical equipment and device, which are included in the list of medical devices by the Health Facilities and Services Regulatory Bureau. Or if it's a standard of care that is validated by the pool of experts and they indicate that it should be included in the PMDL, then it will be accelerated. So currently, the general process track, and I will not be discussing all of this, goes through several processes. The first or the start will be a call for topic nomination. So this is similar to the DOST call for proposals. We do call for topic nomination. At present, the topic nomination is limited to DOH and PhilHealth because they are the ones most affected by our assessments. However, Before, it was open to all the public, so stakeholders, even including from the private industry, could submit nominations. And then we prioritize the topics, assign them to the different committees, finalize the research question, develop the protocol, assess the topic, then review the preliminary assessment, and we do evidence appraisal, and we release the provisional recommendation to the public. Stakeholders, everybody can submit feedbacks or uh, appeals. Then it is finalized and then submitted to the Secretary of Health, then disseminated. Now, whether the DOH or PhilHealth agrees with the assessment, what happens is this. If it's a positive recommendation, then it goes to the Department of Health and PhilHealth. They have they have the final decision whether to include it in a benefit package or whether to purchase the health technology. However, if it's a negative recommendation by the Health Technology Assessment Council, then it cannot be procured by the DOH or it cannot be included in the benefit package. Okay, so for the clinical equipment, the subcommittees are very much involved in the topic assessment. So when we do topic assessment, we have to synthesize the evidence. Not only synthesize the evidence, so it's like a related literature review, but we also have to grade the evidence. We lean towards local evidence. That's why we really look for real world evidence. So if you have trials done in the country or in similar low middle income countries, then that would be best for use in the assessment. Uh, we also um, do assessments for disinvesting a particular health technology in the Philippines. So the end goal will be an HTA report, which is the evidentiary basis for the development of the recommendation. So the framework of your topic assessment will be as follows. So we have the initial research question, we scope them, we have the final research question, the protocol, and then the clinical assessment. We just like to focus more on the clinical assessment. So when there are technologies that are superior, so when we assess a new health technology that is superior to an existing health technology, then we do an economic assessment as well as an LSHE assessment. For the economic assessment, we either do cost effectiveness or cost utility analysis plus a budget impact analysis. If it's non-inferior, then we also do an economic assessment, but the type will be a cost minimization analysis, including a budget impact analysis. If it is inferior, if it's an inferior technology, then it will not be recommended. Now, people have been asking, what if it's very inexpensive, but it's inferior? Let's say the outcome, it just decreases mortality by 5% as opposed to the current health technology, which decreases mortality by 70%. But it's very, very inexpensive. Let's say it's only 1 peso. Now, people are saying, then you have to recommend it or you still have to assess it. But the problem is, as we saw in COVID, we had two vaccines. One was inferior and one was very much more effective than the first vaccine. What happened? People knew that and people were lining up for this superior health technology. So if we gave a positive recommendation to the very inexpensive health technology, then who decides who gets this inferior health technology? are you willing to be the one to get that inferior health technology? Okay? So, uh, hopefully, maiwasan natin yung tinatawag nating kapit sa patalim, which is what happened during the COVID. Okay, so the policy and research questions, this should be very important. It should be aligned with the medical societies. So the population, the intervention, or the treatment, that the equipment considered for assessment or appraisal, the comparator, which will be replaced by the new intervention, and the outcomes. So we are looking at several outcomes depending on what type of assessment. So if it's a clinical assessment, then we look at clinical outcomes. If it's an economic assessment, then we look at cost effectiveness and budget impact. Then we also have ethical, social impact, legal impact, as well as health system implications. Okay? So for the evidence synthesis, we conduct systematic review or adopt systematic review done by other researchers. We may do a meta-analysis and then we appraise the existing, or we can appraise or adopt an existing systematic review. So we do consider existing reviews by World Health Organization or other health technology assessment agencies like the UK NICE. So as we mentioned, if it is superior then or non-inferior, then that's the only time it will proceed to economic assessment and LSHE assessment. So the type of economic evaluation will be cost minimization analysis for non-inferior. So this means it's just a cost comparison. The benefits are assumed to be equal. Okay, so the outcomes being measured, if it's superior, will usually be a quality of life. So we also do, for the LSHE assessment, we do literature review, including consultations with societies and focus group discussions with different stakeholders. So this would involve patients as well as the clinicians who will be using the health technology. We also do focus group discussions, for example, for program implementers like the DOH. So I'm very happy to announce that we were able to develop the methods guide, a separate methods guide for clinical equipment and devices. So this incorporates what are the characteristics of a clinical equipment and device, what are the evidence available, and all of these aspects would be different from a drug. For example, there are not many evidence available for devices and equipment. The market dynamics is also very different, the life cycle and the rapid innovations in clinical equipment and devices. Usually equipment would have a market dynamic of about 1 year to 2 years. So for the characteristics of a clinical equipment and devices would have a wider range of products. If you just look at the self-test kits for COVID, okay? So if you look in the market, currently in the market, there are several brands, but during COVID, there were hundreds of brands available for the test kits for COVID. So even for a particular brand, they would have several models, and each of them may be treated as a different health technology. So they would also have different technical characteristics. So for drugs, or rather for devices, for example, we look at specificity and sensitivity for diagnostic equipment. We also look at user dependency, like the operator's learning curve, the infrastructure that is needed, and the additional resources like training or additional treatment. If it's a diagnostic kit, then what treatment would be required? So RCT data is not always available, and it's difficult to do blind studies. Head-to-head studies are not always done for medical devices. So the evidence would be obtained from observational studies, registries of other countries, and other real-world evidence. It has a different regulatory pathway and requirements. So for drugs, it's usually certificate of product registration, but for equipment for the Philippines, the FDA would have what you call the certificate of medical device registration and the certificate of medical device notification, depending on the risk, the equipment. So if it's a high risk equipment, then it would require a CMDR or a higher risk level. If it's low risk, then it can be downgrade, or rather, I don't want to say downgrade. Then it would have to go through the CMDN or a uh, lower risk device for lower risk devices. So again, market dynamics is very, very different. The cost would have not only the device itself, the procurement cost, but it would also involve the infrastructure. So if you want to purchase a CT, uh, computed tomography device, then you would have to do a certain change in your infrastructure as well as running costs, the maintenance as well as consumables. Okay, so for the methods guide of the medical devices, we follow this is similar to the methods guide in the general track. So we have finalization of the research question, the protocol development, and the assessment. But in the assessment, we also include environmental impact assessment because we would notice that there are so many uh, clinical equipment and devices. You go to a hospital and the device is stuck in the corner and it becomes a cabinet. So right now, we're also looking at leasing structures. For example, we do not have to uh, do straight purchase, but we can lease the equipment, and then the cost will just be the accessories. So the training will also be covered by the manufacturer. So some devices we did look at the leasing alternative. So for the clinical assessment, we do grade for the quality of evidence. We also do critical appraisal for all the involved studies for diagnostic accuracy using the QUADAS 2 tool and the ROB tool or the risk bias tool for RCTs and the Robbins 1 tool for NRS. For the economic assessment, we also include household financial impact. So this would include not only the payments, but may also include transportation of patients as well as the additional caregivers. So we also do qualitative as well as quantitative systematic review for LSHI. And for the environmental impact assessment, we like to do life cycle approach, environmentally extended IO analysis or model, and then an MCDA. So these are several tools that may be used for the environmental impact assessment. Okay, so moving along, uh, I mentioned this already. This is currently being revisited by the medical device unit under the DOH on which devices should be included in the Philippine Essential Medical Device List. This is the algorithm that we are using for the inclusion in the Philippine Essential Medical Device List. We are consulting with DOH if they would like any changes for this algorithm. Please note that the first step for assessment would still be a certification from the Philippine FDA. Okay. So currently, we have done, for 2024 rather, we finished 12 assessments. We updated the HTA process and methods guide. And we also implemented a pilot study for the uh, methods guide of the clinical equipment and devices. I'm happy to mention that the group who did the pilot study is from the LSU. So the dean of the economics actually headed that particular project. So please note that the Health Technology Assessment Philippines would also give funding for these projects. So uh, we do have funding or funds for external assessment groups. Okay, um, that's all for the clinical equipment and devices. But I would like to first mention that there are international efforts for HTA for medical devices. The World Health Organization has already released its own methods guide for health technology assessment for medical devices. The Health Technology Assessment Body of UK NICE, just released its methods guide for assessment of digital health technology. So this would also include the software. And lastly, the Health Technology Assessment International currently has a project on assessing what are the gaps, uh, the issues involved in doing health technology assessment in low middle income countries. So, um, as a final note, again, I would like to ask for all your help. Please help us. We are looking for collaborators. We still need to assess hundreds of equipment and devices alone, not including the drugs that would go to thousands. So we really need your help. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you very much for listening. And hopefully we can partner together in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing your expertise. Let us give a virtual round of applause to our speaker, Catherine Lee Ramos. Now we now we proceed with the question and answer, and I would like to invite everyone. If you have any questions, please type in your questions in our chat box. To proceed with some of our questions, Catherine, you mentioned about there would be a shifting from a reactive to a proactive resource management, and for hospital administrators or even local health official. I'm just curious, what are some initial steps that they are making for this shift, especially if they're already used to the reactive process.
Okay, thank you. That's actually a very challenging question, Doc Aris. The situation on the ground is really very different. Um, Particularly for COVID. So you would imagine all the hospitals coming in with a request for assessment. So you would be bombarded with uh, requests to assess particular health technology. Um, the idea is it has to be planned. Uh, I'm talking about public hospitals because for private, the Health Technology Assessment Council does not cover private purchases. So for government hospital, if it will go through the DOH budget, then it has to be planned in advance. So their purchase has to be planned in advance, and then it has to be submitted for the DOH to the DOH or to PhilHealth so that it can be nominated to the Health Technology Assessment Council. So there is a prioritization mechanism. So which topic is assessed first has to be prioritized. So for a single year, it has all of these requests will be prioritized. So the planning ahead of time, it's quite difficult. So what we usually do is we assist institutions when they want to submit topics for assessment. We do assist institutions. We tell them, we inform them what you need to do. So we handhold institutions if need be, so that we can assist in or ease their burden.
Thank you for sharing that. And even in your presentation, you actually presented a roadmap, a timeline for the assessment. I'm just curious for PhilHealth if there is like an influence in designing their benefit package, and if we are seeing faster adoption of this new technology with the rigorous evaluation.
Um, right now, that's the reason why we need to align with DOH and PhilHealth, so that when a recommendation or when a positive recommendation comes out, how will they implement? Because how they will implement is strictly under the purview of PhilHealth and DOH.
Mm.
So how will they craft the benefit package? Uh, we we can align all of these questions and hopefully uh, come out with a better implementation, so that mas mabilis when the assessment comes out, then there would be a benefit package. The good news is currently there are now assessments from PhilHealth. We ask them what their top topics would be, and then we focus on that so that the assessment can be done as soon as possible so that they can prepare the benefit package that will be rolled out.
Thank you for that, Miss Catherine. Um, Now, coming from, of course, biomedical engineering background, I'm just curious how much weight does the HTAC place on the total cost of ownership versus the initial procurement cost of clinical equipment,
I'm sorry, Dr. Aris, total cost
of ownership, say maintenance, calibration, and even spare parts.
So, um, yes, that's the difficulty for clinical equipment and devices. So, as we all know, in engineering, we learned that it has to have the purchase cost does not only involve the uh, manufacturing cost, but it also involves the research and development.
Mm,
So that is actually being figured in the cost effectiveness analysis. Even the accessories, even the uh, infrastructure, for example, if you have to have power, external power, if it needs to have an air vent, then that is actually included in the costing.
I see. And also, since we're talking about processes, some of the ideologies in processes is already incorporating sustainability. How does the sustainability development goals are put into this framework of processes and evaluation assessment?
So, for example, Doc Aris, we prefer leasing because what happens is when the machine has depreciated, then it doesn't become a white elephant in the corner of the hospital. Uh, it becomes a very hard to maintain
Mm,
after 10 years, for example. So we would prefer that the manufacturer cover the
mm,
cost of removing the equipment.
I
And hopefully it can be updated with a new one. Usually what we would prefer na that would be the case, but currently there are some difficulties having manufacturers cover that for existing equipment. But for new technologies, moving forward, that is what we prefer. We emphasize that this would involve an environmental cost to the hospital or to the institution. So the manufacturer would have to cover that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Let me see if there are any questions in our chat box. Okay, so we have a question from James David Abiog. So his question is he's asking, when evaluating expensive medical equipment, how heavily does the HTA Council weigh long-term operational costs such as maintenance, staff training, compared to the initial purchase price?
Thank you po. So, for the cost, all of those costs are added up po. So when we do the ICER or the incremental cost over effectiveness ratio, the numerator, the cost, will not only include the purchase price, it will also include the accessories, the training, the change infrastructure. So lahat po yun. So you can say na equal weights kasi lahat added into the equation po.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Catherine. Are there any questions for our speaker? All right, so I guess we have no more further questions, Ms. Catherine. Thank you so much for providing us with an insight in your study. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And please apply. I would like to ask everyone here to apply. By the way, Doc Aris, pwede mag-plug.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So if you would like to apply as an external assessment group and apply for equivalent funding, please proceed to our website, hta.dost.gov.ph. We are actively looking for partners. But what is best is if you have a group that would involve that is multidisciplinary. So you would have an engineer, you would have an health economist, you would have an environmentalist, you would have a patient advocate in your group. So that when you do the assessment, we usually do assessment like, for example, this group will do the clinical assessment, this group will do the LC assessment, but that would be lower funding. So if you want to capture the pot, then you can include several people in your group so that you can do the entire gamut from clinical assessment to the LC assessment. So thank you po.
Ayan. Again, thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause again to our speaker, Ms. Catherine Lee Ramos. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maraming
Thank
salamat.
you. Thank you, Doc. Thank you.
Okay, so allow me to share my screen. Okay, so we would like to get your feedback to further improve the delivery of this LaSalle Sustainability Lecture Series. And we hope to see you again next month on another presentation. So again, thank you so much for joining us this morning for today's lecture, and hope to see you again by next month. Again, this is Ari Sobando signing off for today. Thank you and see you again next meeting. Have a good day. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Dr. Aris, bye.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. So we'll be closing the meeting. Thank you, everyone.